Listen carefully. Manipulators don't look for weak people. They look for unprotected minds. They look for people who react emotionally, explain themselves too much, doubt their instincts, and crave approval. Gaslighters, covert persuaders, and psychological predators don't overpower you. They slip past your defenses while you are distracted, emotional, and unsure of yourself. By the time you realize what's happening, your confidence is already eroded, your clarity is gone, and you're questioning your own reality. This audiobook is your armor. In the next 90 minutes, you will learn how manipulation actually works, why intelligent people fall for it, and how dark psychology operates quietly, patiently, and systematically in relationships, workplaces, and everyday conversations. You will not just learn the tactics. You will learn how to shut them down instantly without confrontation, drama, or losing your power. And listen closely to this part. Every chapter builds on the last. Miss one layer, and the defense is incomplete. Stay until the end and you won't just recognize manipulation. You will become someone manipulators instinctively avoid. Before we continue, make a decision. If you value mental clarity, emotional control, and psychological self-respect, subscribe to this channel now. This channel exists to build mental armor, not comfort illusions. Lock it in so you don't lose access to the tools that keep your mind protected. From this moment forward, you are no longer an easy target. You see the patterns. You control the frame, and nothing gets inside your head without your permission. Now stay with me. Because the first mistake manipulators exploit is the one almost everyone makes without realizing it. Chapter 1. Stop explaining yourself. That's how they get in. Listen carefully. The more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. That is not an opinion. That is a rule of human psychology. Manipulators do not overpower you. They wait for you to open the door. And over-explaining is the door. You think explaining yourself makes you clear? You think it makes you reasonable? You think it makes you safe? It does not. It makes you accessible, it makes you readable, it makes you controllable. That's the key. Every extra sentence you add does not clarify. It is exposure. And exposure is what manipulators are trained to exploit. You have a choice. You can speak with precision, or you can talk yourself into a weaker position. Most people don't realize this because over-explaining feels responsible. It feels polite. It feels cooperative. But manipulation feeds on politeness. Manipulation feeds on your need to be understood. Manipulation feeds on your discomfort with silence. Let's break this down. Over-explaining is not communication. It is anxiety trying to protect itself. When you explain too much, you are not sharing information. You are trying to manage perception. You are trying to control how you are seen. You are trying to avoid rejection, conflict, or judgment. And the moment someone senses that, they have leverage. That's how they get in. Think about the workplace. Your boss questions a decision you made, a calm, grounded response would be simple. This was the best option based on the data we had. But instead, you keep talking. You justify. You defend. You list reasons. You preempt objections that were never raised. What happens? Your boss stops listening to the content. They start reading your tone. They sense uncertainty. They sense self-doubt. Now, the conversation is no longer about the decision. It's about your confidence in it. The more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. That's the rule. The same thing happens in relationships. You set a boundary. I'm not comfortable with that. That should be the end of the sentence. But you don't stop there. You explain why. You soften it. You apologize for it. You give context. You give history. And suddenly the other person has material. They don't hear a boundary, they hear an opening. They respond with, "So what you're saying is, but you said earlier that," if that's how you feel, Then why did you? Now you are defending your own boundary. That is not a strength. That is surrender disguised as kindness. You don't need their permission. Let's be very clear about this. Healthy people respect clear statements. Manipulative people probe explanations. If someone pushes harder when you explain more, it's not because you're dealing with confusion. You are dealing with control. That's the key. Over-explaining gives manipulators 3 things they want. First, it gives them data. Your fears, your motivations, your pressure points. Second, it gives them time. The longer you talk, the more they adjust their strategy. Third, it gives them the upper hand, because now you are reacting, and the reaction is weakness. It's not about being rude, it's about being precise. Precision is power. Now listen closely. Minimal response is not silence. Minimal response is discipline. It means you say what is necessary and nothing more. No justification, no emotional padding, no verbal self-defense. Because every time you explain yourself, you are saying something without saying it. You are saying, I'm not sure I'm allowed to stand here. And manipulators hear that clearly. You have a choice. You can speak to be liked, or you can speak to be respected. Those are not the same thing. Let me give you a real example. A colleague asks you to take on extra work. You don't have the capacity. The correct response is simple. I can't take that on right now. But instead you say, I'd really like to help, but I have a lot going on, and I've been under pressure lately, and I don't want to let anyone down, and maybe later this week. Now watch what happens. They don't hear no. They hear negotiation. They push. They guilt. They reframe, and suddenly you're doing the work anyway. Why? Because the more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. That's the repetition you need to internalize. Minimal response shuts this down instantly. I can't take that on. Pause. No follow-up. No apology. No defense. Silence does the work. This is uncomfortable at first, because silence exposes your own insecurity. It removes your usual escape route. But that discomfort is growth. It's not about confidence. It's about containment. Strong people do not leak information. Strong people do not talk to fill space. Strong people do not explain themselves to feel safe. They state, they stop, they hold the line. That is silent authority. And silent authority is the first layer of psychological armor. Let's talk about why silence works. When you stop explaining, 2 things happen. First, the other person has to respond. They can no longer hide behind your words. Second, the power dynamic shifts. You are no longer chasing agreement, you are holding a position. Manipulators hate this, that they rely on momentum. They rely on emotional flow. They rely on you doing the work for them. Silence breaks the rhythm. That's the key. Now, this does not mean you become cold or dismissive. It means you become intentional. You speak when there is value. You stop when there is not. Here is the discipline you must adopt. Before you speak, ask yourself one question. Am I adding clarity or am I managing discomfort? If the answer is discomfort, stop talking. You don't need to convince, you don't need to justify, you don't need to overqualify your position. Your calm presence is enough. And here is the hardest truth of this chapter. People who push you to explain yourself are not seeking understanding. They are testing boundaries. When you explain, you fail the test. When you hold silence, you pass. That's how they get in, and that's how you shut the door. You have a choice. You can keep explaining and keep losing ground, or you can speak less and regain control. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being grounded. It's not about winning arguments. It's about not entering traps. It's not about saying more. It's about saying less. The more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. Say it again. The more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. Let that settle into your nervous system. Because from this moment forward, you are done narrating your decisions. You are done defending your boundaries. You are done justifying your existence. You state, you pause, you observe. You don't need their permission. You have learned the first rule of psychological defense. Do not open the door. You stopped explaining yourself. You sealed the first breach. Now we move to the next layer, because when explanation fails, manipulators escalate. They don't argue, they redefine reality. You mastered restraint. Now it's time to learn detection. Chapter 2. Manipulators don't argue. They redefine reality. Listen carefully. Manipulators do not win by proving you wrong. They win by making you doubt what is real. They are not interested in debate. They are not interested in truth. They are interested in control. And control begins the moment you stop trusting your own perception. That's the key. If someone argues with you, you still have ground to stand on. If someone redefines reality, the ground disappears. This is the core mechanism of gaslighting. Not yelling, not aggression, not obvious lies, subtle distortion, small corrections, gentle reframing, calm denial. One day you ask yourself a dangerous question. Maybe I'm wrong. You have a choice. You can anchor yourself to reality, or you can drift into someone else's version of it. Let's expose how this works. A manipulator rarely says, "That didn't happen." They say, "That's not how I remember it." They don't say, "You're wrong." They say, "You're being emotional." They don't say, "You imagined it." They say, "You're reading too much into it." These phrases are not innocent. They are not neutral. They are not clarifying. They are weapons, because each one shifts the focus away from facts and onto you, your memory, your tone, your interpretation, your emotional state. And once the conversation shifts from what happened to you, the manipulator is winning. That's the key. Let's look at a workplace example. You were told a deadline, you met it. Now someone says the deadline was different. You respond calmly. No, the deadline was Friday. They smile. I don't think that's what I said. Now watch what happens if you are not trained. You explain. You search your memory. You justify. You say, "Well, I wrote it down because you said," and now the conversation is no longer about the deadline. It is about whose memory is better. You are already off balance. The manipulator doesn't need to prove anything. They just need you to doubt. The moment you start defending your perception, you have stepped into their frame of reference. You don't need their agreement. Now let's talk about relationships. You bring up a behavior that hurt you. You say, "When you said that, it crossed a line." A healthy response would be curiosity or accountability. A manipulative response sounds calm and reasonable. "I think you're misinterpreting what I meant." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I see your point." Not, "Let's talk about it." Instead, they redefine reality. The issue is no longer what they did. The issue is how you perceived it. That is gaslighting. And here is the danger. Gaslighting works best on intelligent, self-aware people. Why? Because intelligent people question themselves. They reflect. They analyze. Manipulators exploit that strength. They know you don't want to be unfair. They know you don't want to overreact. They know you don't want to be wrong. So they use your self-awareness against you. That's the key. Reality redefinition follows a predictable pattern. First, denial. That didn't happen. Then minimization. It wasn't that big of a deal. Then reinterpretation. That's not what I meant. Then the projection. You're being too sensitive. By the end, you are no longer discussing facts. You are defending your sanity. You must never do that. Here is the rule you must internalize. You do not argue reality. You assert it. Arguing invites negotiation, and assertion establishes ground. It's not about convincing them, and it's about staying anchored. Let me show you the disciplined response. Someone says, "That's not what happened." You do not explain. You do not debate. You do not escalate. You say calmly, "That is how I experienced it." And you stop. No defense, no examples, no emotional charge. That sentence is powerful because it is unattackable. They cannot disprove your experience. They can only deny it. And denial reveals them. That's the key. Here is another response that shuts manipulation down. We see this differently. Not "you're wrong," not "let me explain." Just a statement of divergence. Manipulators rely on collapse. They need you to merge into their version of reality. When you refuse to merge, their tactic fails. You have a choice. You can chase agreement, or you can maintain alignment with yourself. Let's go deeper. Why does reality redefinition work so well? Because the human brain seeks coherence. We want things to make sense. We want a single version of events. Manipulators exploit this by creating ambiguity. If they can make reality feel unclear, they gain time and leverage. Confusion is not an accident. Confusion is the strategy. Say it again. Confusion is not an accident. Confusion is the strategy. The moment you feel foggy, disoriented, or unsure of what just happened, pause. That feeling is your signal. It's not about memory, and it's about manipulation. Now let's talk about what never works. Trying to prove reality to a manipulator. Evidence does not fix gaslighting. Logic does not fix gaslighting. More explanation does not fix gaslighting. Why? Because this is not a misunderstanding. It is a power play. And power plays do not end with agreement. They end with boundaries. Here is the discipline you must practice. You ground yourself in facts, but you do not present them for approval. You know what happened. You know what was said. You know what you experienced. That is enough. You do not need a consensus to be sane. That's the key. Let me give you a simple grounding technique. When someone challenges your perception, ask yourself silently, what did I observe directly? Not what you felt, not what you inferred. What you saw, what you heard. Facts anchor reality. Then respond with restraint. That's not how I experienced it. We remember this differently. I'm clear on what I observed. Then stop. Silence forces exposure. If they escalate, they reveal themselves. If they back down, you held your ground. Either way, you win. You don't need their permission. Now listen to this carefully. The most dangerous moment in manipulation is when you start correcting yourself out loud. I might be wrong, but maybe I misunderstood. I could be overthinking this. Stop doing that. Those phrases are invitations. They signal uncertainty. They signal openness to override. They signal that your reality is negotiable. Your reality is not negotiable. That does not make you rigid. It makes you grounded. You have a choice. You can keep second-guessing yourself, or you can trust your perception and refine it privately. Self-reflection is internal. Self-erasure is external. Never confuse the two. It's not about being defensive. It's about being anchored. It's not about winning conversations. It's about protecting your mind. And here is the final truth of this chapter. Manipulators avoid strong boundaries, but they flee strong anchors. When you stop arguing reality, they lose interest. When you stop chasing agreement, they lose leverage. When you trust your perception, they lose access. That's the key. You have learned to stop explaining yourself. You have learned to stop debating reality. You are sealing the doors, but manipulators have one more move when explanation and distortion fail. They provoke emotion. Because emotional reactions are the fastest way back inside your head. You anchored reality. Now you must control your reactions. Listen carefully. Manipulators do not need your agreement. They need your reaction. That's the key. The moment you react emotionally, you open a door. Not because you are weak, but because emotion creates access. Anger gives them leverage. Defensiveness gives them control. Explaining gives them information, but emotion gives them entry. You have a choice. You can feel emotion and still stay in control. Or you can let emotion speak for you and lose ground instantly. This chapter is about one discipline: emotional containment, not suppression, not denial. Containment, because emotion is human. Reaction is optional. Most people don't understand this difference. They believe that feeling something requires expressing it, that if they do not react, they are being fake or dishonest. That belief is wrong, and manipulators count on it. Here is the truth you must internalize. Your emotions are information, not instructions. Say it again. Your emotions are information, not instructions. When you react emotionally, you surrender authority. You hand control to whoever triggered you. And manipulators are experts at triggering. Let's expose how this works. A manipulator will poke, not directly, subtly, a comment, a tone, a question framed as concern, a passive remark. They are not trying to hurt you. They are testing you. They are watching for signs. Does your voice change? Do you explain more? Do you get defensive? Do you rush to correct? If you react, they advance. If you stay neutral, they retreat. That's the key. Think about the workplace. A colleague says, "Are you sure this is the right approach?" On the surface, it sounds reasonable. But watch your internal response. Your chest tightens, your mind speeds up, you feel the urge to defend. If you react emotionally, you explain, you justify, you list reasons, you overcorrect, and now the power is shifted. They didn't challenge your idea, they tested your composure, and composure failed. The same thing happens in relationships. Someone makes a subtle accusation. You've been distant lately. If you react emotionally, you apologize excessively. You defend yourself, you promise change without clarity, and now you are chasing approval. That's how emotional reactions become invitations. It's not about what they say, it's about what it triggers. Manipulators do not need to dominate you, they just need to activate you. Once activated, you do the work for them. That's the key. Now let's talk about the illusion that keeps people trapped. People believe that staying calm means they don't care, that if they don't react, they are weak, that silence is submission. This is false. Calm is not indifference. Calm is control. Staying cold does not mean you don't feel. It means you don't leak. Strong people feel deeply, but they decide carefully. You don't need to perform your emotions to prove sincerity. That need is what manipulators exploit. Here is a rule you must adopt. If something triggers you, pause before you respond. Always. That pause is not hesitation. That pause is dominance. Because whoever controls the tempo controls the interaction. Emotionally, people rush. Controlled people slow down. You have a choice. React quickly and lose leverage, or respond slowly and keep power. Now let's talk about provocation. Manipulators escalate when they don't get a reaction. They will push harder. They will say something sharper. They will cross a line. This is the moment most people fail. They snap. They defend. They explode. And the manipulator wins. Why? Because now the conversation is no longer about behavior. It's about your reaction. You raised your voice. You got emotional. You lost control. They are calm. You are not. That contrast is not accidental. That's the setup. Here is the discipline that stops this cold. You separate internal emotion from external behavior. You feel anger, but you do not show it. You feel frustrated, but you do not act on it. You feel insulted, but you do not correct immediately, because emotion expressed prematurely becomes ammunition. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. Let me give you a real example. If someone criticizes you unfairly in a meeting, your instinct is to defend yourself publicly. That instinct feels justified. It also destroys your leverage. The disciplined response is simple. You pause. You say calmly, "I disagree," and you stop. No explanation, no escalation. That sentence does something powerful. It signals confidence without exposure. Later, in the right setting, you address the issue with facts. Timing is everything. Reacting emotionally gives them the moment. Responding strategically gives you the outcome. That's the key. Now listen closely. Manipulators feed on emotional energy. If you starve them, they move on. They are not interested in calm people. They are interested in reactive ones. When you stay cold, something interesting happens. They get uncomfortable. They fill the silence. They reveal intent. Silence under pressure is not weakness. It is psychological pressure. Here is a phrase you must remember. Let me think about that. That sentence buys you time. It shuts down urgency. It blocks manipulation. Urgency is one of the most common triggers manipulators use. They push for immediate answers. They demand instant reactions. Urgency kills judgment. You must slow the moment down. You don't need their timeline. You don't need their pressure. You don't need to respond immediately. You have a choice. You can react to urgency, or you can neutralize it. Staying cold does not mean you agree. It means you refuse to be rushed. Now let's address a critical mistake. People think staying calm means suppressing emotion forever. That is not the goal. You process emotion privately. You express it strategically. You never release it impulsively. Emotion expressed impulsively is a weakness. Emotion expressed intentionally is power. That's the discipline. Here is a simple framework you must adopt. First, notice the trigger. Second, pause your response. Third, choose your action. That pause is where control lives. Without it, you are predictable. With it, you are untouchable. You don't need their permission. Let me say something uncomfortable. If someone can make you angry on command, they own you. If someone can make you defensive instantly, they control you. If someone can provoke emotion, they can direct behavior. That ends now. You have a choice. You can continue to leak emotion, or you can contain it and reclaim authority. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being unreachable. The goal is not to win arguments. The goal is to deny access. When you stay cold, manipulators lose interest. They look elsewhere. They seek easier targets. That is success. Say this to yourself. Emotion felt is not emotion followed. Say it again. Emotion felt is not emotion followed. You are building armor. Layer by layer. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. Now we move deeper. Because when emotion no longer works, manipulators change tactics. They create confusion. They blur meaning. They shift signals. They destabilize clarity. You mastered emotional containment. Now you must master clarity. Chapter 4. Confusion is not an accident. It's the strategy. Listen carefully. Confusion is not a side effect of manipulation. Confusion is the objective. That's the key. Manipulators do not want clarity. Clarity limits their options. Clarity exposes intent. Clarity ends games. So, they create fog, mixed messages, shifting expectations, contradictory statements, vague promises, unclear rules. And when you feel confused, you feel off balance. When you feel off balance, you look for guidance. And manipulators are always ready to provide it. You have a choice. You can tolerate confusion and lose power, or you can demand clarity and regain control. Most people misunderstand confusion. They think it means they missed something. They assume they are uninformed. They blame themselves. That is exactly what the manipulator wants. Because self-blame keeps you quiet. Self-doubt keeps you compliant. Confusion keeps you dependent. That's the key. Let's look at how this shows up in the real world. In the workplace, confusion often sounds polite. We'll circle back on that. Let's keep it flexible. Let's see how it evolves. We'll decide later. These phrases sound collaborative. They are not. They are placeholders. They delay accountability. They keep you guessing. Now watch what happens over time. The goalposts move. Expectations shift, decisions change without explanation. And when you ask for clarity, you get a smile and another vague response. If you stay passive, confusion becomes the operating system. And whoever controls the system controls you. That's the strategy. In relationships, confusion looks emotional. I don't know what I want right now. I need space. But I also want closeness. I didn't mean it that way, but you shouldn't feel that way either. You are left trying to interpret signals, trying to read between the lines, trying to anticipate moods. That mental effort is not accidental. It drains you. It keeps you reactive. It makes you chase stability. And chasing stability is a losing position. You don't need their permission. Here is the hard truth. When clarity benefits someone, they offer it freely. When clarity costs someone power, they withhold it. Confusion is not neutral. Confusion is leverage. Say it again. Confusion is leverage. Manipulators use confusion to do three things. First, to avoid responsibility. If nothing is clear, nothing can be enforced. Second, to maintain flexibility. They can change their position without admitting it. Third, to control your behavior. Confused people seek direction. Confident people set it. That's the key. Now let's expose the trap. When you are confused, your instinct is to ask more questions. You want explanations. You want reassurance. That instinct feels logical. It often makes things worse. Why? Because manipulators answer confusion with more confusion. They respond vaguely, that they deflect, they complicate. And now you are working harder to understand something that was designed to be unclear. Stop doing that. Clarity does not come from chasing explanations. Clarity comes from setting standards. Here is the discipline you must adopt. When something feels unclear, you name the lack of clarity. Calmly, directly. You say, "This is unclear," and you stop. No accusation, no emotion, no story, just a statement. This does something powerful. It forces the other person to either clarify or reveal intent. Healthy people clarify. Manipulators resist. That resistance is information. That's the key. Let's take a practical example. Your manager gives you feedback that contradicts previous instructions. You feel confused. The weak response is to adjust silently, to guess what they want, to overwork to cover uncertainty. The disciplined response is simple. Can you clarify which priority takes precedence? And you wait. Silence is doing the work. If they clarify, good. If they deflect, you have your answer. You don't need to argue. You don't need to accuse. Clarity or exposure, those are the only two outcomes, and you win either way. Now let's address a common fear. People avoid asking for clarity because they fear appearing difficult. They fear conflict. They fear judgment. That fear is expensive. Because confusion costs more than clarity ever will, confusion wastes time. Confusion drains energy. Confusion erodes confidence. Clear people are not difficult. They are grounded. Manipulators label clarity as aggression. Do not accept that label. It's not about being confrontational. It's about being precise. Precision is power. Now listen to this carefully. You are not responsible for interpreting unclear behavior. You are responsible for responding to it. If someone refuses to clarify, you do not lean in. You lean back. Distance is a response. Reduced engagement is a response. You don't need to fix the confusion. You need to stop participating in it. That's the key. Here is another rule you must internalize. If someone benefits from you being confused, they will try to keep you that way. When clarity threatens their control, confusion becomes the shield. Do not fight the shield. Step away from it. Let me give you a simple framework. When faced with confusion, ask yourself 3 questions. What is unclear? Who benefits from it being unclear? What boundary restores clarity? Then act accordingly. Sometimes the boundary is a question. Sometimes it is a pause. Sometimes it is disengagement. All of those are valid. You have a choice. Chase clarity from someone who avoids it, or create clarity through your own actions. Creating clarity often looks like this. I'm moving forward with X unless told otherwise. I need a clear answer to proceed. I'm stepping back until this is defined. These statements are not aggressive. They are decisive. They return responsibility to where it belongs. That's the key. Now let's talk about emotional confusion. Manipulators often mix warmth and withdrawal, praise and criticism, attention and distance. This keeps you guessing, keeps you invested, keeps you trying. The rule is simple. Consistency matters more than intensity. Do not chase intensity. Do not interpret mixed signals. You respond to behavior, not promises. You respond to patterns, not words. Confusion collapses when you focus on what is consistent. That is how you stay grounded. You don't need their permission. Here is the final truth of this chapter. Clarity is not something you receive. Clarity is something you require. When you stop tolerating confusion, manipulation loses oxygen. When you stop guessing, power returns. You have learned to stop explaining. You have learned to stop debating reality. You have learned to contain emotion. You have learned to expose confusion. You are building armor, but manipulators have one more move when clarity threatens them. They appeal to fairness. They appeal to reason. They appeal to morality. They try to pull you back into the frame. You mastered clarity. Now you must master the frame itself. Chapter 5. Stop seeking fairness. Seek control of the frame. Listen carefully. Manipulators don't win by being right. They win by deciding what right even means. That's the key. Most people lose power because they are trying to be fair. They want balance. They want mutual understanding. They want reasonable outcomes. Manipulators want none of that. They want control of the frame. The frame is the invisible structure of the conversation. It defines what matters. It defines what is allowed. It defines who must justify themselves and who does not. And if you don't control the frame, you are playing inside someone else's rules. You have a choice. You can seek fairness and keep losing, or you can control the frame and keep your power. Let's expose the trap. When someone manipulates you, your instinct is to appeal to reason. You say things like, "That's not fair. Let's be logical. That doesn't make sense. That's unreasonable." You think you are standing up for yourself? You are not. You are accepting their frame. Because the moment you argue fairness, you are agreeing that fairness is the metric. And manipulators always define fairness in a way that benefits them. That's the key. Fairness is subjective. Frames are not. Let's look at a workplace example. Your workload increases unfairly. You bring it up. You say, "This isn't fair compared to others." Now watch what happens. They respond calmly. "Well, everyone has different capacities. You're more capable. This is just how things are right now." Suddenly, fairness ceases to be a standard. The frame shifts. Now the conversation is about your attitude, your resilience, your flexibility. You are defending yourself again. You lost the frame the moment you appealed to fairness, because fairness requires agreement. And manipulators never agree, they redefine. That's the key. In relationships, this looks emotional. You say, "I just want things to be fair." They respond, "Life isn't fair." Or worse, "You're always keeping score." Now, fairness is framed as immaturity, and you are on the defensive. Manipulators are not offended by unfairness. They are empowered by it. So stop appealing to fairness. Fairness is not a shield. It is a trap. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about the frame. The frame answers one question. What is this conversation really about? Manipulators constantly shift this. You bring up a behavior. They shift it to your tone. You raise a boundary. They shift it to your intention. You state a fact. They shift it to how it made them feel. If you follow these shifts, you lose control, because whoever defines the topic defines the outcome. That's the key. Let me give you a clear example. Like you say, "You missed the deadline." They respond, "Why are you attacking me?" If you respond to that, you've lost the frame. Now the conversation is about your aggressiveness, not the missed deadline. The disciplined response is simple. "This is about the deadline." And you stop. No explanation, no emotional defense. You pull the conversation back to the frame. Frame control is not about arguing. It's about refusing redirection. Manipulators survive on redirection. They want to talk about anything except what threatens them. You must not follow. You have a choice. Chase emotional detours, or hold the frame steady. Now listen closely. Frame control feels uncomfortable because it removes emotional cushioning. It feels blunt. It feels exposed. That discomfort is power consolidating. Most people soften their frame because they fear conflict, but conflict avoidance is how you lose authority. It's not about being aggressive, it's about being immovable. Here is the core rule. You do not debate inside a distorted frame. You restate the frame or disengage. That's it. Let me show you how this looks in practice. Someone says you're being unreasonable. You do not defend your reasonableness. You say, "We're discussing the agreement." Someone says you're overreacting. You do not justify your reaction. You say, "We're discussing the behavior." Someone says, "You always make things difficult." You do not explain yourself. You say, "That's not the topic." And you stop. Silence reinforces the frame. That's the key. Now let's talk about morality. Manipulators love moral frames. They say things like, "A good person would. If you really cared, this is the right thing to do." Morality sounds noble. It is one of the most powerful manipulation tools because morality bypasses logic. It triggers guilt. It pressures compliance. You must see this clearly. Morality is not neutral. It is often weaponized. When someone uses morality to pressure you, they are not appealing to ethics. They are appealing to your self-image. They want you to act to preserve identity, not reason. The disciplined response is not to argue morality. It is to return to boundaries. You say, "That doesn't work for me," and you stop. You don't need to explain your values. You don't need to justify your character. Your actions define you, not their approval. You don't need their permission. Now let's address a common mistake. People think controlling the frame means dominating the conversation. It does not. It means refusing to be pulled off topic. It means choosing what you engage with. It means deciding what matters. That is power. Here is a simple internal check you must practice. Ask yourself, am I defending myself or am I directing the conversation? If you are defending, you are inside their frame. If you are directing, you are in control. That's the key. Frame control also means knowing when to exit. If someone refuses to stay on topic, if they keep shifting, if they keep emotionalizing, you disengage. I don't think this is productive. We can revisit this later. I'm stepping away from this conversation. That is not losing. That is leadership. Walking away from a bad frame is strength. You have a choice. Stay inside a rigged game or leave it. Now, let me say something critical. Manipulators cannot survive without your participation. They need you to argue, they need you to explain, they need you to react. They need you to care more than they do. When you stop seeking fairness, they lose their favorite tool. When you control the frame, they lose their advantage. That's the key. Fairness is a value. Frame control is a skill. Values guide you privately. Skills protect you publicly. Never confuse the two. You have now learned something essential. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. You stopped tolerating confusion. You stopped chasing fairness. You are no longer easy to move, but manipulators still have one powerful weapon left: guilt. They will make you feel wrong for holding your ground. They will cast themselves as victims. They will flip the roles. You mastered the frame. Now you must master guilt, because guilt is the hook that pulls strong people back into weak positions. Chapter 6. The Guilt Hook. How they turn you into the villain. Listen carefully. Guilt is not an emotion. Guilt is a weapon. That's the key. Manipulators do not defeat you by force. They defeat you by making you feel wrong for protecting yourself. They don't argue your boundary. They shame it. They don't challenge your decision. They moralize it. They don't attack you directly. They flip the roles. Suddenly, you are no longer the one setting limits. You are the villain. You have a choice. You can carry guilt that is not yours, or you can put it down and keep your power. Most people fail here, not because they are weak, but because they are decent. Decent people don't want to hurt others. Decent people care about impact. Decent people want to be fair. Manipulators exploit decency. That's the key. Let's expose how the guilt hook works. You set a boundary. I can't do that. I'm not comfortable with this. This doesn't work for me. Instead of respecting it, they respond with emotion. They sigh, they withdraw, they act wounded. Or they say things like, "Wow, I didn't think you'd be like this. I guess I expected more from you. After everything I've done for you. So I'm the bad guy now?" Notice something important. They do not address the boundary. They address your character. That is intentional, because if they can make you feel like a bad person, they don't need to cross your boundary. You will remove it yourself. That's how guilt works. Guilt turns self-respect into selfishness, boundaries into cruelty, clarity into coldness. And once you accept that framing, you are finished. That's the key. Let's look at a workplace example. You decline extra work, you do it calmly, you do it professionally. The response comes back. I guess teamwork doesn't matter anymore. Some of us are willing to go the extra mile. I thought you were more committed. This is not feedback. This is guilt deployment. If you react emotionally, you explain, you justify, you promise to do better next time, and now you are working late again. Why? Because guilt made you doubt your right to say no. The same thing happens in relationships. You assert a need. They respond with sadness or disappointment. I'm just hurt you do this to me. I would never treat you this way. I guess I don't matter that much. Notice the move. They are not asking for compromise. They are assigning blame. They are turning your boundary into an attack. That's the hook. You must see this clearly. Guilt is not proof of wrongdoing. Guilt is proof of pressure. Say it again. Guilt is not proof of wrongdoing. Guilt is proof of pressure. You have a choice. You can let guilt dictate your behavior, or you can examine whether it belongs to you. Here is the most important distinction you must learn. There is real guilt, and there is manufactured guilt. Real guilt comes from violating your own values. Manufactured guilt comes from violating someone else's expectations. Those are not the same. Manipulators blur this line deliberately. They want you to feel morally compromised for doing what is necessary. That's the key. Now let's talk about the language of guilt. Manipulators use vague moral terms: caring, supportive, loyal, kind. They never define these terms, because vague standards are easy to weaponize. If being kind means always saying yes, you are trapped. If being supportive means sacrificing yourself, you are trapped. You must refuse undefined obligations. Here is the discipline. When guilt arises, you ask yourself one question: what rule did I actually break? Not what they feel, not what they expect. What rule? If there is no clear violation of your values, the guilt is not yours. You do not need to carry it. That's the key. Now listen closely. Manipulators often present themselves as victims. They exaggerate harm. They dramatize impact. Why? Because victimhood creates moral leverage. If they are the victim, you must be the offender. Do not accept that frame. You can acknowledge feelings without accepting blame. This is critical. You say calmly, "I hear that you're upset." And you stop. Not, "I'm sorry I did this." Not, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Those phrases assign guilt. You acknowledge emotion without surrendering position. That is a strength. You don't need their permission. Let me be very clear about something. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to prioritize yourself. None of that makes you a bad person. Manipulators want you to believe that boundaries are betrayals. They are not. Boundaries are information. They tell others where you end. People who respect you adjust. People who manipulate you protest. That protest is information. That's the key. Now let's address the internal battle. Guilt often lingers even when you know intellectually that you did nothing wrong. Why? Because guilt is emotional conditioning. You were trained to equate compliance with goodness. Breaking that conditioning feels wrong at first. That does not mean it is wrong. It means you are changing. Growth feels like guilt before it feels like freedom. Say it again. Growth feels like guilt before it feels like freedom. You must tolerate that discomfort. Don't suppress it. Don't argue with it. Just refuse to obey it. Emotion felt is not emotion followed. Here is a practical rule you must adopt. You never reverse a boundary to relieve guilt. Never. Because the moment you do, you teach the manipulator exactly how to control you next time. You reinforce the behavior. You show them the hook works. That's the key. Instead, you hold steady. You let the guilt pass. And it will pass. Guilt loses power when it is not rewarded. Now listen to this carefully. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. You are responsible for managing your actions. That distinction changes everything. Manipulators collapse that distinction intentionally. They want you to feel responsible for how they feel. That is not empathy. That is control. Empathy does not require self-betrayal. You can care without complying. You can understand without agreeing. You can be kind without being manipulated, and you have a choice. Carry guilt that isn't yours, or stand in your integrity and let discomfort pass. Integrity is not pleasing everyone. Integrity is not avoiding disappointment. Integrity is alignment with your values, and values do not change because someone feels upset. That's the key. Here is the final discipline of this chapter. When guilt appears, do not explain. Do not apologize. Do not justify. You pause. You check alignment. You proceed. Simple, clean, controlled. You have now dismantled one of the most powerful manipulation tools in existence. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. You exposed confusion. You took control of the frame. You rejected false guilt. You are no longer easy to bend, but manipulators still try one last thing when guilt fails. They wait. They go quiet. They use silence, because silence can be pressure too. You mastered guilt. Now you must master silence itself. Chapter 7. Silence is not weakness. It's psychological pressure. Listen carefully. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is the application of it. That's the key. When manipulators stop talking, most people panic. They rush to fill the space. They explain. They apologize. They chase resolution. And in doing so, they surrender control. You have a choice. You can fear silence, or you can use it. Manipulators understand something most people do not. Silence creates discomfort. Discomfort makes people reveal themselves, and the one who breaks the silence first usually loses. That's the key. Let's expose how silence is weaponized. A manipulator sets a boundary challenge. You hold your ground, you don't explain, you don't react, so they go quiet. No response, no acknowledgement, no closure. This silence is not peace, it is pressure. It's designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel rude, to make you feel wrong. Most people cannot tolerate this. They reach out, they soften their position, they try to clear the air. And the manipulator wins without saying a word. You don't need their permission. Now let's be precise. There are two types of silence: neutral silence and strategic silence. Neutral silence is space. Strategic silence is pressure. Manipulators use strategic silence to punish boundaries. They withdraw attention. They withhold response. They create absence. Why? Because absence triggers anxiety in people who seek approval. If silence makes you uncomfortable, that is not weakness. It is conditioning. And conditioning can be undone. That's the key. Let's look at a relationship example. You say no, they say nothing. Hours pass, days pass, your mind starts working. Did I overreact? Maybe I was too harsh. I should reach out. Stop. That urge is not intuition. It is discomfort seeking relief. Silence is testing whether you will betray your boundary to restore connection. If you do, the silence worked. If you don't, the silence fails. That's the key. In the workplace, silence looks professional. Your manager ignores your message. Your colleague doesn't respond. You feel invisible. You feel anxious. You send a follow-up, then another, then you soften your position. Now you are chasing attention. That dynamic is a power imbalance. The one who needs a response more is weaker. You must reverse this. Here is the discipline. When silence appears, you do nothing. You don't chase. You don't fill space. You don't seek reassurance. You wait. Waiting is not passivity. Waiting is leverage. Because silence is expensive for manipulators. They need engagement. They need a reaction. They need confirmation. If you don't provide it, they feel exposed. That's the key. Now listen carefully. Silence only works against you if you interpret it as rejection. You must reframe it. Silence is information. It tells you one of three things. They are uncomfortable, they are testing you, or they are revealing disinterest. All three are useful. None requires your intervention. You don't need to fix silence. You need to observe it. Here is a powerful internal rule. If someone goes silent after you assert yourself, the silence belongs to them. Do not pick it up. Let it sit where it is. Now let's talk about your own silence. Most people think staying silent makes them look weak. They fear appearing indifferent or passive. That fear comes from confusion between silence and submission. Submission is compliance. Silence is restraint. Restraint is strength. When you don't respond immediately, you control the tempo. When you don't over-communicate, you maintain position. Silence signals confidence. It says, I am not chasing. That message is loud. That's the key. Now let's address a critical mistake. People use silence as punishment. That is manipulation. Do not become what you are defending against. Your silence is not withdrawal. It is containment. You are not trying to hurt. You are refusing to leak. There is a difference. Silence used to control others is toxic. Silence used to control yourself is discipline. Know the difference. You have a choice. Use silence to pressure, or use silence to protect. Always choose protection. Now let's look at what happens when you hold silence correctly. Manipulators become restless. They start talking again. They over-explain. They reveal intent. Why? Because silence flips the dynamic. Now they are unsure. Now they are exposed. And once they talk, they show you exactly who they are. That's the key. Here is a simple phrase to pair with silence. I've said what I needed to say. And then nothing. That sentence closes the door without slamming it. It ends the conversation on your terms. You don't need their agreement. You don't need resolution. You need control of yourself. Now listen to this carefully. Silence is not avoidance when you have already stated your position. It is completion. Once a boundary is stated, the conversation is over. Anything after that is negotiation, and negotiation only happens if you allow it. Silence prevents negotiation, and that's the key. Let me give you a mental anchor. Silence after clarity is strength. Silence before clarity is avoidance. Use silence only after you have spoken clearly. That is discipline. Now let's address the emotional side. Silence will feel uncomfortable at first. Your nervous system will react. That reaction is withdrawal from validation. Let it pass. Do not confuse discomfort with danger. You are safe. And each time you hold silence, your tolerance increases. Soon, silence will feel neutral. Then it will feel powerful. You don't need their permission. Here is the final truth of this chapter. Silence reveals who needs whom more. When you stop filling space, manipulators lose their grip. They cannot pull you in, they cannot push you around, because you are no longer reachable on demand. You have now mastered silence. You stopped explaining. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. You exposed confusion. You controlled the frame. You rejected guilt. You held silence. There is only one thing left: distance. Because the ultimate defense is not winning interactions. It is limiting access. You mastered silence. Now you must master distance. Chapter 8. Access is power. Reduce it. Listen carefully. Manipulators don't control you by force. They control you by access. That's the key. Who has access to your time, your attention, your energy, and your emotions has power over you. And most people give access away without realizing it. You answer immediately. You engage emotionally. You stay available. You explain yourself. And then you wonder why certain people drain you. You have a choice. You can continue to be accessible, or you can become selective. Manipulation requires proximity. Distance breaks it. That's the truth. Let's be clear about something uncomfortable. You do not owe everyone the same level of access. You do not owe immediate responses. You do not owe emotional availability. Access is earned, and access can be revoked. That does not make you cold. It makes you disciplined. That's the key. Most manipulation persists because people stay too close for too long. They keep engaging, they keep explaining, they keep hoping things will change. But manipulators don't change because of insight. They change because of consequences. Reduced access is a consequence. Now let's expose how manipulators exploit access. They message frequently. They demand quick responses. They create urgency. They insert themselves into your mental space. If you respond every time, they train you. If you engage emotionally, they hook you. Over time, you feel obligated, available, responsible. That sense of obligation is not real. It is conditioned. That's the key. In the workplace, access looks professional. Meetings without purpose, messages without urgency, interruptions disguised as collaboration. If you accept constant access, your focus collapses. If your focus collapses, your power erodes. You must control entry points. You don't need their permission. Here is the discipline. You decide when you are reachable. You decide what deserves a response. You decide how much energy you give. Not them. Reduced access is not punishment. It is alignment. Let's talk about response time. Immediate response signals availability. Availability signals priority. If someone can reach you anytime, they assume they can influence you anytime. You must break that assumption. Deliberate delay is powerful, not ignoring, not ghosting. Deliberate delay, it signals independence. That's the key. Now let's address relationships. Manipulators often maintain constant contact. Messages, check-ins, emotional updates. It feels intimate. It is not. It is monitoring. If someone needs constant access to you, they are not connected to you. They are controlling. Healthy relationships allow space. Manipulative ones resist it. So you create space. You respond less. You engage less emotionally. You stop oversharing. You don't announce this. You implement it. Behavior teaches faster than words. That's the key. Here's a critical distinction. Distance is not abandonment. Distance is calibration. You are adjusting access to match behavior. Respect increases access. Manipulation decreases it. Simple. Now listen carefully. You do not need to justify distance. Explaining distance invites negotiation. Negotiation invites pressure. You create distance quietly. You stop initiating. You shorten responses. You disengage sooner. You are not dramatic. You are consistent. Consistency builds boundaries. That's the key. Let's look at a real example. Someone constantly pushes your limits. You explain. You assert. Nothing changes. So you reduce access. You stop responding immediately. You stop engaging emotionally. You stop sharing details. What happens? They escalate at first. They push harder. They complain. This is not a problem. This is proof that the strategy is working. They feel the loss of control. Hold steady. Manipulators adapt or disappear. Both outcomes are acceptable. You have a choice. Preserve access and lose peace, or preserve peace and limit access. Peace is not passive. Peace is defended. That's the key. Now let's talk about the internal access. Manipulators don't just want physical access. They want mental access. They want you thinking about them, replaying conversations, second-guessing yourself. That is access too. You must cut that off. How? By refusing to ruminate. When a manipulative interaction ends, it ends. You do not rehearse, you do not analyze endlessly, you do not justify in your head. Mental access is the most dangerous access. You reclaim it by redirecting attention. You don't need their permission. Here is a rule: if someone disrupts your peace, they lose access to your mind. You don't argue with thoughts, you replace them. Attention is currency. Spend it wisely. That's the key. Now let's address a fear. People worry that reducing access makes them lonely, isolated, disconnected. The opposite is true. Reducing access removes noise. It creates space for healthier connections. Manipulators crowd space. Healthy people respect it. When you reduce access, the right people remain. That's clarity. Now listen to this carefully. Access is not a right, it is a privilege. Privileges are conditional. You are allowed to adjust them at any time. That does not require explanation. You don't need their permission. Here is the final discipline of this chapter. When manipulation arises, you do not endlessly confront. You do not argue endlessly. You reduce access. Less time, less attention, less emotion. Distance is the ultimate boundary. You have now learned how to protect yourself. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. You exposed confusion. You controlled the frame. You rejected guilt. You mastered silence. You reduced access. At this point, most manipulators are gone. But there is one more danger. Sometimes manipulation comes from people with authority, people you cannot easily avoid, bosses, leaders, institutions. Distance alone is not always possible. So you need one final layer: internal independence. You mastered access. Now you must master self-trust. Chapter 9. When authority manipulates, build internal independence. Listen carefully. The most dangerous manipulation comes from people you cannot walk away from. That's the key. Bosses, leaders, institutions, systems. When authority manipulates, distance is limited, silence has boundaries, access cannot always be reduced. So you need something stronger: internal independence. Because if someone controls your approval, your livelihood, or your future, they will eventually test your compliance. You have a choice. You can outsource your judgment to an authority, or you can anchor it internally. Most people fail here not because they are weak, but because they confuse authority with truth. Authority is power. Authority is not reality. That distinction changes everything. That's the key. Let's expose how authority manipulates. Authority rarely threatens directly, and it implies, "This is how things are done here. This is what successful people do." You don't want to be seen as difficult. Think about your future. These statements are not instructions. They are under psychological pressure. They trigger fear. They trigger compliance. They trigger self-censorship. Before you know it, you are acting against your own judgment. Not because you were ordered to, but because you anticipated consequences. That is manipulation through anticipation, and it is extremely effective. Now listen carefully. The most powerful form of control is not external enforcement. It is internal obedience. When you start editing yourself to stay safe, the authority no longer needs to act. You act for them, as that's the key. Let's look at a workplace example. A manager never says no directly. They hint, they sigh, they imply disappointment. You adjust your behavior, you stay late, You avoid asking questions. You stop challenging decisions. Not because you were told to, but because you don't want to be labeled. That label fear becomes your cage. You don't need their permission. Internal independence breaks this. Internal independence means one thing: your sense of right and wrong does not come from hierarchy. It comes from values. Authority can influence outcomes. It cannot define reality. That's the key. Now let's talk about the illusion of security. People believe compliance buys safety. It does not. Compliance buys temporary approval. And temporary approval is unstable. The more you comply, the more is expected of you. The more is expected, the harder it is to stop. This is how people slowly lose themselves. You must interrupt this pattern early. How? By separating consequences from identity. Authority can affect your position. It cannot define your worth. Say it again. Authority can affect your position. It cannot define your worth. Internal independence starts here. Now let's address a critical fear. People worry that internal independence means rebellion. That means conflict. That means being difficult. It does not. Internal independence is silent. You do not announce it. You do not challenge unnecessarily. You do not provoke. You simply stop outsourcing your judgment. You listen. You evaluate. You decide. You comply strategically, not reflexively. That's the key. Let me give you a practical framework. When authority issues a directive, ask yourself 3 questions. Is this clear? Is this aligned with my values? What are the actual consequences of saying no? Not imagined consequences, actual ones. Fear exaggerates, clarity reduces fear. Once you see the real cost, you can make a conscious decision. Choice replaces compliance. You have a choice. Now listen to this carefully. Internal independence does not mean you always say no. It means you always know why you say yes. That distinction is everything. Manipulation thrives on automatic yes. Independence thrives on deliberate choice. That's the key. Let's talk about authority using morality. Authority often frames compliance as virtue. This is for the good of the team. This is what responsible people do. This is bigger than you. Sometimes this is true, sometimes it is coercion. Internal independence allows you to tell the difference. You ask, is this actually necessary? Or is this convenient for them? Necessity stands up to scrutiny. Coercion collapses under it. You don't need to argue this out loud. You need to know it internally. Now let's address pressure through uncertainty. Authority often withholds information. They keep plans vague, they delay clarity. This creates dependency. Internal independence means you do not wait passively. You seek information, you document, you create options. Options are power. When you have alternatives, authority loses leverage. That's the key. Here is a rule you must adopt. Never put your entire identity inside one authority structure. Not a job, not a leader, not a system. Diversify your sources of stability. Skills, relationships, competence, self-trust. When authority senses you have options, manipulation weakens. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about internal dialogue. Manipulated people say things like, I have no choice. I can't risk it. I need this. Those statements feel true. They are rarely accurate. Internal independence replaces them with better questions. What is the worst realistic outcome? What do I gain by complying? What do I lose by complying? This is not rebellion, this is clarity. Clarity dissolves fear. That's the key. Now listen to this carefully. Authority loses power the moment you stop seeking approval from it. You still perform, you still contribute, but you no longer attach your self-worth to validation. This is subtle. And it is devastating to manipulation, because now guilt fails, pressure fails, silence fails. You are internally anchored. Let me say something important. Internal independence does not make you invincible. It makes you resilient. You may still face consequences, but you face them consciously. There is dignity in that. And manipulators cannot touch dignity. You have now reached the final layer of armor. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped debating reality. You stopped reacting emotionally. You exposed confusion. You controlled the frame. You rejected guilt. You mastered silence. You reduced access. You built internal independence. There is only one thing left: integration. Because protection is not enough. You must become someone manipulation cannot stick to. Not occasionally and consistently, and this is not a tactic, this is an identity. You mastered independence. Now you will lock it in. Chapter 10, Become a Hard Target. Live unreachable. Listen carefully. Manipulation does not stop because you understand it. It stops because you become someone it cannot attach to. That's the key. This final chapter is not about tactics. It is about identity. Because manipulation does not hunt intelligence. It hunts availability. It hunts emotional openness without discipline. It hunts people who still explain, still react, still hope. A hard target does none of that. You have a choice. You can spend your life defending yourself, or you can become unreachable. Unreachable does not mean isolated. It means insulated. You are present, you are calm, you are clear, but you are not exposed. That's the goal. Let's define what a hard target actually is. A hard target is someone who does not leak information, someone who does not react emotionally, someone who does not chase clarity from unclear people, someone who does not seek fairness from unfair systems, someone who does not carry guilt that isn't theirs, someone who does not fear silence, someone who controls access, someone who trusts their own judgment. You are no longer interesting to manipulators. That's the key. Manipulators do not persist where there is no payoff. They move on. Now let's talk about the mistake people make at this stage. They think becoming a hard target means becoming cold, aggressive, or detached. That is wrong. Coldness is still a reaction. Aggression is still engagement. Detachment can still be avoidance. A hard target is grounded, and you are not defensive. You are not hostile. You are not trying to prove anything. You simply live from discipline. Discipline replaces explanation. Discipline replaces reaction. Discipline replaces fear. That's the key. Let's talk about consistency. The reason manipulation works on most people is not because they lack knowledge, it's because they are inconsistent. They hold boundaries sometimes. They react other times. They explain under pressure. They collapse when tired. Manipulators wait for inconsistency. They do not need full access. They need occasional access. Your job is to remove that. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be predictable to yourself. Consistency is armor. You have a choice. Be emotionally available on demand, or be emotionally regulated by design. Now listen carefully. Being unreachable does not mean you don't care. It means you care selectively. You care about what aligns. You disengage from what manipulates. Selective caring is maturity. Immature people care indiscriminately. Manipulators rely on that. That's the key. Let's talk about daily behavior. A hard target does not rush responses. They pause. A hard target does not overshare. They keep things simple. A hard target does not argue endlessly. They restate once and stop. A hard target does not chase closure. They create it internally. A hard target does not seek validation. They validate themselves. These are not dramatic actions. They are quiet habits. And habits create identity. Now listen to this carefully. You do not need to announce boundaries, you live them. You do not need to confront every manipulation, you outgrow it. You do not need to win arguments. You remove incentives, that's the key. Let's address a final fear. People worry that becoming unreachable will make them lonely. It won't, it will make them free. Because manipulation crowds your life with noise. Freedom creates space, and space attracts healthier people. People who respect clarity, people who respect boundaries, people who do not need control to feel safe. Hard targets attract equals. Soft targets attract predators. You choose. Now let's talk about internal alignment. Being unreachable externally requires alignment internally. If you secretly doubt yourself, manipulation will find you. If you secretly seek approval, manipulation will sense it. So you must close the loop. You decide who you are before anyone tests you. You decide what behavior you tolerate. You decide what standards you live by. You decide what you walk away from. Decisions made in advance remove hesitation. Hesitation is where manipulation enters. That's the key. Here is a simple internal statement you must adopt. I know who I am. I know what I tolerate. I know when I leave. Repeat it, not out loud. Internally, certainty is silent. Now let's integrate everything you have learned. You stopped explaining yourself. That closed the first door. You stopped debating reality. That anchored perception. You stopped reacting emotionally. That denied access. You exposed confusion. That restored clarity. You controlled the frame. That ended redirection. You rejected guilt. That preserved integrity. You mastered silence. That applied pressure without engagement. You reduced access. That limited proximity. You built internal independence. That removed authority-based control. Now all of it converges into one state: unreachability. This is not something you turn on and off. This is how you live. You move slower. You speak less. You decide more. You do not fear losing people who benefit from your confusion. You do not fear disappointing those who depend on your compliance. You do not fear silence. You are not trying to be understood by everyone. That need is gone. That's the key. Let me say something direct. Some people will disappear from your life when you become a hard target. That is not loss. That is filtration. What remains will be real. Now listen carefully. You are not responsible for educating manipulators. You are responsible for protecting yourself. You are not here to fix people. You are here to live intact. Manipulation thrives on people who are halfway disciplined. You are no longer halfway. You have a choice. Return to old habits under pressure, or live unreachable by design. One leads back to exhaustion. The other leads to freedom. This is not about winning against manipulators. It is about exiting the game entirely. And once you exit, they have no power. That's the final truth. You don't need their permission. You don't need closure. You don't need validation. You need alignment. And alignment makes you untouchable. From this moment forward, you do not engage to be liked. You do not explain to be safe. You do not react to be heard. You live from discipline. You are calm. You are clear. You are unreachable. That is the shield. And once you wear it, manipulation has nowhere to land. Stay here, live here, and never give access back to those who lost it. Manipulation only works when you are emotional, unsure, and seeking validation. You are none of those anymore. You now understand something most people never do. Manipulation is not loud. It is subtle. It enters through explanation, emotion, confusion, guilt, and unguarded access. And you have closed every one of those doors. You see the tactics now. You recognize the patterns as they appear, not after the damage is done. You feel the pull, but you no longer follow it. You do not argue with manipulators. You do not explain yourself to gaslighters. You do not react to psychological pressure. You observe, you pause, you choose your response. You replaced reaction with discipline. You replaced confusion with clarity. You replaced guilt with alignment. That is real power. From this moment forward, your calm is your shield, your clarity is your weapon, and your silence is your authority. But understand this, defense is only the beginning. Once manipulation no longer works on you, something else becomes essential. The ability to think clearly, independently, and accurately under pressure. Because manipulators are not the only threat to your mind. Your own unchecked thoughts can sabotage you just as effectively. That is why the most powerful next step after this audiobook is critical thinking mastery. Control your thoughts before they control you. That audiobook takes everything you learned here and strengthens it from the inside out. It teaches you how distorted thinking forms, how assumptions hijack judgment, how emotion disguises itself as logic, and how to build a mind that cannot be easily influenced, rushed, or deceived. Manipulation attacks from the outside. Faulty thinking attacks from the inside. When you master both, you become genuinely untouchable. If this audiobook sharpened your awareness, lock that edge in. Subscribe to this channel now, not for motivation, but for mental discipline. This channel exists to build people who cannot be shaken, pressured, or subtly controlled. Here is your final challenge. For the next 7 days, stop explaining yourself. Stop reacting emotionally. Stop seeking approval. Watch what happens. Manipulators lose interest. Noise fades. Power returns to you. And when you are ready to go even deeper, continue with critical thinking mastery and finish building a mind that answers to no pressure but truth. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, and never give access back to people who only wanted control.